Welcome to the podcast, Pastors and Patriots, How Christians Can Save America, with your host, David Baker. David Baker is a former member of the 82nd Airborne Division in the U.S. Army and has been a preacher now for over 35 years. He and his wife have 11 children and 11 grandchildren so far. He wants to do his part to save America so his children and grandchildren can have a country with freedom, liberty, and justice for all. Thank you for listening, following, liking, downloading, and sharing this podcast to help do your part to save America.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to episode 2. What about separation of church and state? A very important topic we will get into and cover it, and I believe thoroughly enough that you should go, okay, I got this, and not listen to what the world says when they claim separation of church and state. So we'll get into that in just a minute. I said I'm going to start with a personal story or some trivia to be able to help you know, hey, who this guy is. I love to hear when my wife and I get together, we talk about to couples, hey, how did you meet? How did you get put together? And so I think that's always fun to know. I was in Bible college and came out of the Army, and my Army life was in the world, and I wasn't ready to date because I need to clean my mind and clean my heart up. So the whole first semester, I said, I'm not going to look at girls. I'm not going to talk to girls. And I ran from them. And after the first semester, classes, ministry, mind, heart, all that was good. Okay, God, I feel like I'm ready. I don't want to date for play or for fun, really. I want to find the one that you want me to spend the rest of my life with. And I'm walking down a hallway. This is like the next day after I prayed that, and I saw a young lady I'd never seen. I smiled, and she smiled, and I've never heard God's audible voice, but boy, through my spirit, it was strong. It said, that's her. That's the one. What? Who is? I didn't know her name, didn't know anything about her. Found out who she was, got counsel and advice, was a good girl. Finally got the nerve to ask her out on the phone from dorm floor to dorm floor. When I got on the phone, I thought, I don't even know if she knows who I am. So my brilliant, warm, suave, romantic statement was, hey, do you know who I am? She goes, yes, I think so. She wasn't totally truthful. I found out she had watched me the whole first semester when I was coming into church and was interested in dating me. And so got up the nerve, asked her out on our first date. And it was a week before the Valentine banquet. That was a big, fancy dress-up date that they had. And I wanted to ask her to that, but I wanted to make sure that there was at least some interest there before I did. So we ended up going out that weekend, and everything was great. Asked her to that, and that was it. Then we started dating steady and got married a year and a half later. We've been married for almost 34 years, and it's been downhill. I'm just kidding. It's been awesome. It's been amazing. So it is great. And by the way, you know it's a good marriage because you can't joke about a marriage unless it's good. The marriage won't last through that. So that's a short story of how I met my wife. And so we'll give you some little personal story so you get to learn about podcasts and we can have some interaction. Also said we're going to give you a biblical quote from our founding fathers or from people of history. And this is a powerful one. George Washington said, "It is impossible to rightly govern the world without God and the Bible." Wow. I believe it. It's impossible to rightly govern the world without God and the Bible. All right, here we go. Separation of church and state. Let's jump right in. So many times when Christians get into politics or preachers have anything to do with politics, someone will emphatically say, but what about separation of church and state? You shouldn't be in politics. You shouldn't have an opinion. It's happened to me at least a dozen times where I've posted something online about America or about our country or something that's involved in the politics of our country. And I've had at least a dozen times people push back and they click and say, oh, he's a pastor. And they've come back and told me, you shouldn't be talking about this. You're a pastor. Don't you know the Constitution, separation of church and state? Honestly, I have gotten that over and over and over. Now, if you're not laughing or chuckling, then you really need this lesson. But it is amazing how many people think that. This quote, phrase of separation of church and state has become law, enshrined. It's become constitution. It's become a bedrock foundational principle of the Bible without people understanding at all what it means and where it comes from. Okay? And I tell them, I did not give up my First Amendment right of freedom of speech when I became a pastor. I'm a veteran. I was a paratrooper. I was willing to fight and die for my country. And now that I'm a pastor, I give up my freedom of speech. Are you kidding? Do you even understand what the First Amendment is? It is our freedom of speech and freedom of religion to be able to speak about what we think and what we believe. And so, no, I did not give up my freedom of speech when I became a pastor. So simply put, separation of church and state means the church and state should not be married. Okay, if you have a marriage and they're going through a tough time, sometimes they separate. That's what the term separation of church and state should be. We're going to give you all the details of it, and you're going to know this. It's very simple. It's beautiful. It's wonderful, but we need to know what it means. The church and state should not be married. The state should not control the church. The church should not control the state, okay? The church should not control it. Does that mean Christians should not be involved? Absolutely not. There should be, and they're supposed to be, and they always have been. So let's go to this. The First Amendment. Please simply understand what this is. Congress shall make no law respecting, here it is, an establishment of religion. That's the phrase. That's the key. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, the most important thing, what we're talking about for this is this: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It's amazing they use that first phrase, that Congress shall make no law respecting religion, and that's how they say it. They don't even go on to say, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Congress cannot make a law to prohibit our free exercise of our religion. That's what it is. And Congress shall make no law to establish a religion. Now, they focus on the word respecting. You understand what that is? They're respecting, meaning they are establishing a religion. Other countries have established a state religion where they are married, where they work together. When our country was founded by the states, by we the people, we wanted to make sure that our nation did not have a Christian church that was married to the government like the other countries were. Please understand, this whole Constitution, this whole coming out to become our own country, our Declaration of Independence, we did not want to be like the countries that we came from in so many ways, and this was one. The European countries have a marriage of the church and the state. Almost all of them did. Germany, you tell me, what is the state church in Germany? Lutheran. They're married. The church and state are together and married. In England, what is the religion in England? The Church of England. By the way, who is the head of the Church of England? Whoever the monarch is. Whether it was Queen Elizabeth or whether it's King now. The head of the Church of England is always the monarch. It's married. There's no separation of church and state in those countries. Switzerland, Presbyterian Church. Italy, the Catholic Church, and other countries had the Catholic Church. And so when they came to the United States, and we're going to show this, the states, many of them had a state religion. When the states and we the people founded the federal government, we did not want the federal government to have one of the Christian churches that they're married to, like Lutheran Church in Germany, or Church of England in England, or Presbyterian in Switzerland, or Catholic Church in Italy. We didn't want that for our country. Every Christian religion was allowed. We're not going to establish one of them, and we're not going to prohibit your free exercise thereof. If you understand the foundation of that, then you understand what this means, okay? They didn't want it to be like the religion where they came from, because if you were not of that state religion, then you were persecuted. So many of the people who came to America, the Puritans and Quakers, came for religious freedom because they were persecuted where they came from. Baptists were persecuted in Switzerland by the Presbyterians. All right, you believe in baptism by immersion, and they drowned them that way. Okay, persecuted. Many people came to this country so they could worship their religion in freedom without being persecuted. So now if we have a federal government and they select one of the Christian churches as the state church, then the other ones are going to be persecuted. That's all that meant. And of course, we're going to show you more of that. So in these other countries, the pastor was an employee of the government and had to toe the party line. Oh boy, how much would some people like that? This country was started so we could have our freedom, and we did not adopt a state Christian religion so others would be persecuted, okay? And so people knew that. They came from that. Now, many of the states, the colonies, had a state church, and many of them were started that way. For instance, you can look all this up. The states that had the Church of England or the Anglican Church as their state church were Virginia, New York, Maryland, North Carolina, and South Carolina. When they set up their state constitution, they had a marriage of the state and the church. And if you were not that, many times you were persecuted. They had what's called the Congregational Church. The states that had the Congregational Church were Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. What? I didn't know that. Most people don't. Listen, our colonies had state churches. When the federal government started, we wanted to make sure the federal government did not choose a state church where the others would be persecuted. Some lasted for a long time after the country started. Maryland had their state church. By the way, Maryland was going to be started as a Catholic state and ended up going, I believe, Congregational Church of England. But it was set up Maryland. It was set up to be a Catholic state, but it ended up voting to be Church of England instead. Maryland had their state church until 1867. Hello. 1867, almost 100 years after the founding. North Carolina had their state religion, their state church, until 1875, almost 100 years after the founding. Separation of church and state just meant that the new country wasn't going to have a state church. That's it. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. This Congress cannot say, all right, we're going to be Congregational, or we're going to be Church of England, or we're going to be Baptist, or we're going to be Methodist. Congress can't make a law to establish a religion for our federal government. Simple, okay? How in the world do they make it what it means today? Because you're a Christian, you're not supposed to talk. You're not supposed to say anything. You're not supposed to run for office. And so the country wasn't going to establish a religion. Establishment generally meant that the government provided direct aid to the church and the pastor's salary. Whoever pays you is who you listen to and to whom you are loyal, okay? Therefore, the pastor was working for the government. He would say what they wanted him to say. This separation of church and state, please listen, it's not in the Constitution. It's not a law. It's not in our founding document. So where did it come from? Listen to this. All right. The members of the Danbury Baptist Association in Danbury, Connecticut, okay, this group of Baptists got together. They were concerned about government interference in the practice of religion. By the way, this is so rich and so important. They stated that if the right to practice our religion was just granted by the government, then it could be taken away by the government. Okay? The recording of this just a couple of days ago, one of these news commentators said, these Christian nationalists, we're going to talk a lot more about this, these Christian nationalists are dangerous, and they believe their rights didn't come from the government, but they came from God. Yes, that's exactly what we believe. Why? The Declaration of Independence says our rights come from God, from our Creator, and they're inalienable. You can't take them away from us. The Danbury Baptists were simply concerned that if the government gives us our rights of freedom of religion, the government can change and take away our right of freedom of religion. Is that simple? Would that be a concern? Okay, so they wrote this to Thomas Jefferson, the president at the time. He wrote back on 1802. Okay, so they wrote this in 1801. But, sir, our constitution of government is not specific. Our ancient charter, together with the law made coincident therewith, were adopted as the basis of our government at the time of our revolution, and such had been our laws and usages, and such still are, that religion is considered the first object of legislation. And therefore, what religious privileges we enjoy as a minor part of the state, we enjoy as favors granted and not inalienable rights. Okay, they're pulling that inalienable rights from the Declaration of Independence. And so, wait, we are given these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They're given to us by our Creator, and they're inalienable. You can't take them away from us. If we enjoy these religious privileges from the state, then they're not inalienable. Thomas Jefferson wrote them back, January 1st, 1801. Here's part of his answer. You can read this, look it up, it's longer, but this is the gist of it. Believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God. Okay, not government involved, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that legitimate powers of government reach actions only and not opinions, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should, quote, make no law respecting an establishment of religion. He's quoting, okay, the First Amendment, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. That's it. That's the phrase. That's where it came. In a letter written January 1st, 1802, back to the Danbury Baptists saying that, look, we are not, as a federal government, going to get in the way of your religion. We believe it's between man and God alone. We are not, and quoting the First Amendment. If you want to understand, listen, could we take away your rights? Absolutely not. Our First Amendment, the first part of it says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's it. That's where it came from. There's nothing at all about Christians not being involved in politics. In fact, many of the states had a religious edict. You had to be a part of an established religion to even run for office, okay? And so to say that, oh, they meant that you Christians couldn't run for office or be in part, absolutely not. It was the opposite. You had to be a Christian. They wanted more people. The only way you can rightly run a government is to have God and the Bible. So there's nothing at all about Christians not being involved in politics. It was keeping the government from interfering with the practice of religion. Even today, okay? The government cannot tax a church. There's a wall of separation of church and state. Now, there are a lot of people who want to take that away. They want to tax churches, but there's a separation there. How in the world is a church supposed to be able to pay for a government when it's separate? Okay? You can tax people, you can tax businesses, but a church is separate from that, and therefore government is not allowed to tax that. So when our country first started, Christian involvement in politics was wanted. Like I said, many states had religious tests that you had to be faithful to and moral to even run for office. What a novel idea that would be. The people wanted Christians to be involved in politics and to run for office. So, by the way, the wrong understanding, listen to this carefully, the wrong understanding of the argument of separation of church and state made the Supreme Court take the Bible out of schools, take prayer out of schools, and take the 10 Commandments out of schools. That's where that came from. Okay, so please understand, this is a gigantic issue. When you do not understand this the right way, oh, you have a Bible in your school. Oh, we've established a religion. Did Congress make a law establishing Baptist or Methodist or Presbyterian or Lutheran as a state religion? No. Then it's not against the Bible. Sorry, it's not against the law. It's not against our Constitution to have a Bible. Prayer. You can't have prayer because you establish a religion. No, that doesn't establish a religion. Establishing a religion is when Congress votes and says, all right, we are going to make Methodist the state religion of the United States of America. And we're going to fund them and protect them, and we're going to hire their pastors, and we're going to work together. That is establishing a state religion. It doesn't do that when you have a Bible or prayer or the 10 Commandments there. Look and see what happened to our schools since the 10 Commandments were taken out. It totally falls apart, okay? The judges said that would establish a religion. No, again, a wrong view of what separation of church and state means, all right? We're going to go into this more, and we'll have some experts on to talk about this, but really interesting to see if there is this, quote, separation of church and state, then please understand, explain to me why so many of the buildings and so many of the things in Washington, D.C. are established with the Bible. So many of our buildings and monuments have verses on it. We're going to talk about that more, but so many of them do. They are Bible verses etched right into the monument. into the walls. The Supreme Court has Moses and the commandments right on it as statues and built into that. And separation of church and state, that's established by stone. Christianity and the Bible were a part of our nation, was not something that was separate. The Washington Monument, the Lincoln Monument, the Jefferson Monument, the Library of Congress, Congress itself, In God We Trust. So many of those things had that in there. Now, I want you to see this, and this is a hotly debated, but back on February 29th, 1892, the Supreme Court had a case called Holy Trinity versus the United States, okay? And they went through this. By the way, it was a unanimous decision. Unanimous decision. David J. Brewer was one of the Supreme Court justices. He wrote the opinion of this. And he said, okay, and there's a book on it you can get, introduction by Stephen A. Flick, PhD. It's called A Supreme Court Declares America, you ready? A Christian Nation. The Supreme Court declares America a Christian nation. This is false. We are not a Christian nation, okay? And there's, I know, the Tripoli Treaty there, and we can talk about that sometime too. But the Supreme Court, in a unanimous decision, writing for it, Holy Trinity versus United States, and he said that the United States is a Christian nation, and goes into all the reasons why. Okay? Now, of course, that would want to be changed now, and there are rulings that could go against that, of course, from then. But to understand the beginning of our country, yes, it was and should be a Christian nation. You are not establishing a religion if you say America is a Christian nation, okay? Of course it was a Christian nation. They were just saying it wasn't going to be a denomination of Christian that we're going to unite with so the others would be persecuted, okay? And again, there's a lot written on this. If you want to just look it up and see of all the monuments, they always would put in references to God, the Bible, and even verses there. All right. So separation of church and state, please understand what that is. Very simple, very easy. A letter written from the Danbury Baptist to Thomas Jefferson, the president, saying, hey, could our rights be taken away from us? Are they inalienable? And he said, no, they can't be taken away. Citing the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law establishing a religion. And then he said, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. That's where it came from, okay? Hope you got that. All right, we're always going to end with this there. 3 big things to save America. If my people, Christians, need to get right with God. Number 2, we need to show people how they can be saved. The Holy Spirit of God on the inside help change them. And number 3, do something, okay? Do something. Vote. Help good candidates win. Give. Run. And like the good Democrats, vote early and vote often. Okay, that is the joke. But please understand separation of church and state. And feel free, please share this with others. There are so many who do not understand this very simple phrase. And because of that, they have a totally twisted view of our country and what should be. All right, God bless, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you have any questions, please send them to christianscansaveamerica@gmail.com or go to the website www.christianscansaveamerica.com. And again, thank you for listening. Please share this with your friends and family so together we can save America.